Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Ultimate Drinks Party interactive Zoom webinar this evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Emma, and this is Catherine, and we're absolutely delighted to have you all with us this evening. So this evening, it's supposed to be extremely interactive, so please do use the chat function. Tell us what works for you in terms of party nibbles and wines that you've come across that work really well. And of course, if you have any tips to hosting the perfect dinner party or drinks party, we'd really love to hear them. So please do let us know. Make sure you hit reply all rather than just sending it to Catherine and I, otherwise that would be a waste of perfectly good knowledge. So I hope you've all got, well, a glass of something in your hand. Catherine and I are both on the Simonsig, the fizz that we have to start with. The general, just to go over a couple of points for canapes generally. The general rule of thumb is about 5 to 6 canapes per head for the first hour, and then 3 to 4 canapes per hour thereafter. But of course, you know the people you're inviting, you know how hungry they might be, and obviously it does depend slightly on what time you're hosting your event as well. So think about how long you would like your drinks party to last. There are always people who are welcome stragglers, you could call. So the people who, when you're thinking, I think the party should be ending now, and they're still there. So, in an ideal world, you've got kind of how long you would officially like it to go for. So you're normally looking at between 2 to 3 hours for a good drinks party. If you can, find out prior to the event if any of your guests have got any food intolerances. And then when you're planning out your canapes, do think about how much time you actually have in the run-up to the party. I don't know about you, Catherine, but I'm a shocker for this. So I'm normally the one who's running around half-dressed, trying to do the hoovering. Everything's a complete tip. The canapes are all still in the fridge because I haven't had time to do them. I haven't actually managed to open any wine, and it's all just gone a bit pear-shaped. But yeah, I'm always rushing around and I always get a bit stressed just before the drinks party starts. But this year I'm going to turn over a new leaf. Yeah, we're going to crack it. So there's lots and lots of things that you can buy from the supermarket to make your life so much easier. You do not need to make everything from scratch. And this is something I've learned to my own cost. So you can get little mini oat cakes, you can get potato cakes. And then if you use the little tiny pastry cutters, you can cut out shapes so that they look pretty. You can put cut out shapes in your kind of loaves of white bread as well, or brown bread, which you can then toast in the oven. Things like if you're using quail's eggs, which made Catherine laugh because she's like, not sure that we have quail's eggs, but quail's eggs for little canapes, you can actually buy them already shelled, which saves you an awful lot of time. And then things like red peppers in the big glass jars, and olive oil, any other antipasto that like artichokes, all of which can be really useful for when you're putting together your canapes. And of course, don't forget to put out just big bowls of popcorn and ready salted crisps as well.
That's my kind of canape. That's a nice, easy party pleaser favorite. Big bowl of crisps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dips. You're onto a winner. Yeah, breadsticks.
Absolutely. Anything that they can go out really quickly and you don't need to worry about them. They'd be absolutely perfect. Most supermarkets now, I was in Marks and Spencer's earlier getting the canapes for us for this evening. Most supermarkets now, the canapes that they do, they all go in the oven at the same temperature, which is so helpful because
although I would say a lot of things go in the oven at 200 for 20 minutes. So
but it
is handy.
Ours is normally 180. So if everything can go in the oven at the same temperature, it stops you from having to kind of go, well, these go in at this point, and then I've got to get that out. I've got to change the oven temperature and then put the next batch in. So just try and make yourselves, your lives as easy as it's possible to be. the supermarkets, a lot of them have got really good canapes in store now. As I say earlier, we were in M&S, but many other supermarkets are available, and they had just shelves and shelves of them. Some of them, if you're buying online, some of the supermarkets, they do require 5 days notice, so bear that in mind and don't leave it to last minute. And then my big tip is work out what you can do in advance. So the more you can prepare the days before the party, the better. The less you have to do at the last minute, the better. And ideally, at the last minute, all you're doing is just putting them on a plate and making them look pretty.
Yeah. And talking of plates, I was just thinking of a couple of other little hints, is that making sure you've got enough serving dishes. And particularly at this time of year, I find charity shops are a boon for some big serving platters. I feel people often decide to get, a whole new crockery set for Christmas because they've got the in-laws coming, or they're entertaining for a much larger group and they need the cupboard space to have a complete set. And you can pick up some really nice dishes and serving platters, or even some of just the foil ones that you can get.
Yeah,
and
they work really well. And the bonus to those is you can put them in the bin afterwards.
Recycle them in. And on the flip side as well of choosing what you're going to serve, because you want to enjoy your party, and when those final stragglers do head off into the night, you don't want to be doing loads of washing up. So food and little nibbles that can be just grazed by, and just actual finger food that doesn't require lots of cutlery, perfect. Or you can use the food itself for cutlery, so crudités, breadsticks for your dips, then it's an edible fork.
Absolutely. And do make sure when you're looking at your canapés, have a think about the size, because what you don't want is somebody biting into something and then half of it falling off onto the carpet. It's best if the canapé can go all in one go. Ideally. So in terms of wines, you're usually looking at roughly 3 glasses of wine per person for a 2 to 3 hour cocktail party. I normally go, because I know my friends and family, I normally go a little bit over that. So I normally do about half a bottle of wine ahead and then a little bit left over, because you obviously don't want to run out. How about you? How much do you normally serve?
I would say around the same. I think as well, especially if you've got perhaps a mixed group, so you may have invited friends and family, and they may not be groups that have normally mingled with each other, especially at Christmas time when it is all heightened excitement anyway. Everyone gets in, has a drink to start with, and you may pour a little bit more than you would for your rest of the glasses as you go, but it's just nice to make sure that you've got enough. That is the key thing.
You don't want to be stressing about potentially running out, because that just takes the shine off the party. Absolutely. So it would perhaps cause people to leave earlier, but it does take the shine off the party. So
and you can always finish unopened bottles further down the line,
absolutely
across the festive period.
So in terms of what kind of wine you're getting, it really depends on your budget, obviously, and what kind of gathering you're having. So if you're having your whole village over, you're probably going to be looking at a very different cost price for your wine than you would if you're having just kind of 5 or 6 really close friends over, where you might kind of raise the game a little bit and go for something a little bit more expensive. So it's kind of thinking kind of champagne or cremant. It's kind of up to you. But I always think it's really nice to start with a glass of fizz or a cocktail. And so for this reason, for our virtual aperitif, we chose the Simonsig, the Kaapse Vonkel Classique Brut. This is the 2020 vintage. So Simonsig is one of the most respected producers in the Cape. It was established in the 1950s, just outside of Stellenbosch. It's owned and run by the Milan family, and winemaking is overseen by Johan and his son Michael. This is the first South African sparkling wine made according to the traditional method, so the same way that you would make champagne, second fermentation in bottle. It's known in South Africa as method Classique back in 1971. It's a blend of 51% Chardonnay, 47% Pinot Noir, 12% Pinot Meunier. A portion of the Chardonnay is fermented in old French oak barrels, and there's no malolactic fermentation. So if any of you actually do have this wine, if you have a taste of it, you'll see that it's got real freshness to it. It hasn't, the malolactic would kind of start to give you more of that kind of slightly kind of creamier, milkier acidity, whereas this is still really fresh and quite kind of appley acidity to it. The wine is aged on its lees, so it's dead yeast cells for 20 months prior to disgorgement, so prior to being cleaned up and put out onto the market. So I popped this one down because, I mean, obviously I do love champagne. We're doing champagne tastings this week. But I do think you need to have wines that if people are staying and if they are opening another bottle, you don't want to be there sobbing in the kitchen going, they've literally bankrupted me. So I thought this one came in at quite a good price, actually.
Yeah.
Value for money.
Value for money, and it tastes like it should cost a little bit more. It's really quite classy. I think if you were giving this to someone that was perhaps very unfamiliar with South African sparkling wines, they would be really pleasantly surprised that it is as sort of concentrated and sort of complex as it is, but it does work equally well, as you said, using it for cocktails, because what you don't want when you're wanting to do a fizzy cocktail is to really use your best vintage champagnes, because they've got enough flavour in that it's not necessarily going to work with the sort of mixer or cordial additions that you want to put in, but B, it's a bit of a waste, and it's a bit of a shame to kind of lessen it slightly with
yeah, it's true. I mean, we've got the Difford's Guide to Cocktails, and for the champagne cocktail, the one with the sugar lump and the brandy, they suggest using Bollinger. And I always think, why on earth would you use Bollinger and then pour brandy and sugar cubes into it?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense at all. So we tend to use Carver. And again, wines which have still gone through secondary fermentation in the bottle, so still kind of the method champenois, traditional method wines. But there's no need to, I think once you start adding flavours, there's no need to spend that much on the sparkling wine itself. So for those of you who do have the wine, we'd be really interested to know what you think about it. And I did see one of the questions that came in, probably safer not to open too many different wines, otherwise you do run the risk of having some left over. And I completely agree. So quite often for us, for a cocktail party or a kind of drinks party, I would have one sparkling wine that people would have an option for as they arrived. One white wine, one red wine.
Oh, okay. The only thing I would add is two white wines.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I would go a sparkling wine, one red wine that I think is like a real nice all-rounder, and then two whites that are contrasting.
Interesting.
On that. Yeah.
Interesting.
But still not so many that you've got a whole, you don't want everyone to just take a glance at your wine rack and pick and choose which one that they fancy that evening. I think you need to dictate slightly your drinks menu. You
certainly do, because otherwise there's said I'm trying to read, is it Mark? As Mark said, you do run the risk of being left over with this amount in each bottle of just vast amounts of different wines, and it's a complete waste. And also if there's one wine that everybody then goes, oh, I really like that one, and you've only got a couple of bottles of it, then you're gonna have to kind of disappoint them. So with the wines, what I've tried to go for are wines which are kind of light, for the white wines, light, dry, crisp. So I've gone for wines that are not massively off the beaten track, but maybe slightly more off the beaten track. So I've avoided Chardonnay, I've avoided Sauvignon Blanc, and I've avoided Pinot Grigio, because those are the wines that people tend to have very firm opinions about, especially Chardonnay and New Zealand Sauvignon as well. A lot of people they can be quite Marmite. So you don't want to have as your potentially only choice or choice of two, a wine that people are like, oh God, really don't like that at all.
The same with the Pinot Grigio. I feel that there can sometimes be a perception that when that is served at a drinks party or a gathering, it can be a little bit the perception of it's a little bit PTA. It's a little bit, it's been bought in bulk, because also this, is the sort of same guidance to do if you are organizing something that is a bit more of a function rather than necessarily an intimate party. So perhaps you're planning for an office do or a parent group get together or something. It's PTAs, parent teacher association. So the sort of thing that you don't want people's preconceived ideas to sort of put a sour note on it, and actually choosing these wines that you have chosen go really well with the intention that we want them to show, but they're also interesting enough that they create a talking point themselves, and hopefully people will really enjoy them.
Well, fingers crossed. So on that note, should we start with the Grüner Veltliner then that we've chosen? So I chose a Grüner Veltliner because as I say, I really wanted something that could be drunk on its own or with food, because remember, at a drinks party, much of the time people are just there to mingle. They don't necessarily have food, it's not a dinner. They don't have food in front of them at all times. So you want something that can sit on its own or sit with food, and something that is interesting enough, as Catherine says, that you can drink it on its own and you're not thinking, gosh, this is dull, but which isn't so demanding of your attention that somebody's trying to talk to you, you're going, no, hang on, I'm trying to get a little bit more from this wine. So you're kind of treading that fine line, aren't you, to just keep it down to a dull raw. So this is the Ferdinand Mayr, the Exklusiv Grüner Veltliner. It's 2022 vintage. And Ferdinand's actually a graduate in music from the Bruckner Conservatory in Linz. He began working as a music teacher, and then from 2009 he actually realized his dream and started making his own wine. The wines themselves are from a series of vineyards around the town of Seftenberg in the Krems region. It's just north of the city of the same name on the Danube, and he has 3 single vineyard sites of old vines. He makes very small volumes of Grüner Veltliner, Riesling, Zweigelt, and Blaufränkisch for his red wines. And I just thought it's a wine that's light, it's minerally, it's interesting. For people who like Sauvignon Blanc, it still has that acidity and that freshness and the
and a little bit the aromatic
the kind of
as well.
The fruit is it's a little bit kind of citrus, it's maybe a tiny bit grassy as well, but it's also got enough weight and a little bit of creaminess there as well for the people who are the Chardonnay drinkers. So for me, it sits really nicely in the middle. And Grüner's, it's one of those great varieties that, I mean, the wine trade's always looking for the next best thing, the next big thing. And Grüner's been on the cards for a while. People have been going, oh, Grüner's going to take off. But I do think that for people who know Grüner, it's a kind of good kind of catch-all wine, really.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. It's got that lovely sort of stone fruit peachiness, but not so ripe that it can become cloying. It's almost like a nectarine rather than a really overripe peach. And where it is in the Krems region, they get quite a lot of sunshine hours, don't they? They have some nice elevation, but obviously from the Danube you get the cooling influence off of the river, so it doesn't over ripen the grapes, and you still have that lovely fresh acidity, which when you've got a real array of little nibbles and canapes, you do often need that, especially because there's a lot of flavor going on.
So this is not a wine that would it won't be overwhelmed. So some of the nibbles that we got were tempura prawns. We got some little tiny mini pies as well, which have been lovely. So the kind of nibbles that aren't overly spiced or anything, but I think it would cope with something with kind of some of maybe the more Indian style nibbles, and
it does have a little bit of a hint of sort of sweetness to it from the ripeness of the fruit, and also we had some, we went very mini, we had some little mini Kievs, like the little, so garlic is often slightly tricky to pair with because it does have similar to onions and that sort of allium family, but because it has a slight sort of greenness, a little bit of a nice greenness, like a slightly grassy, fresh herb note, it works with that sort of thing as well. So, if you were having, like herb rolled cheeses or things that have a little bit of a garlicky, oniony hint to it, like the little garlic mushrooms or things, it would be really nice for that. It wouldn't be jarring as a combination. If anybody, I know, sorry, it's Belinda said it's a great wine. Really likes this wine, so if anybody else has got it and wants to pop what they think in the chat, we'd be delighted to hear it. Likewise, if anybody's got any really good ideas for nibbles, I mean, I put a selection of nibbles onto the email that I sent out, so hopefully there were some ideas there. The BBC Good Food website has a mass of really good canapé ideas, and that's where I got the polenta with the peppers, the jarred peppers. I did that last New Year, which I don't know, I just did too many nibbles. So that's the other thing to try and avoid. Don't do too many nibbles. Although it went in my favour because it meant that didn't get eaten because it was kind of served towards the end of the nibbles. So I had loads of it for New Year's Day. So I ended up having polenta and red peppers for breakfast, which was absolutely ideal. Perfect hangover cure. And I would say as well, in terms of inspiration, it's not as easy to navigate, but our own website, we've got some really good food articles, and especially if you go onto the Christmas section of the website at the moment, there's some nice articles and lifestyle pieces about sort of foods for Christmas. It's got some nice suggestions on there as well, and some supporting information on how to cater for a party and other considerations. But obviously, similarly with the event that we've got next week, and I know Emma, you felt the same, that there's so many options. So when you're trying to narrow it down as a nice core example group of wines, it can be quite tricky. So I'm sure once we've tasted through the 6, we have 6, there will be some honorable mentions as well. Definitely. I mean, it is, I think the other thing we always say is do bear in mind that it's you that's doing all the work, and you're the one hosting the party, so make sure you choose a white and a red that you actually really like. I do quite often come across people who go, oh yes, well I did that wine for my drinks, but I don't like it. And you think, well, you're just punishing yourself. It's a bit like kind of wines for, which we'll be discussing next time, wines for Christmas dinner. Just because somebody says it goes really well, make sure it's actually something you want to drink. Definitely. So what do you think? I really like it. I mean, I really like Grüner Veltliner anyway. I think it is such a gastronomic wine. It's got such versatility to it. And when you think of Austrian food as well, and the breadth that you get there and the range of flavour, you can understand why it pairs so good well. As it is with food. Definitely. Well, for those of you who've tried it, we do hope that you've enjoyed it. So for our next white, we've headed over to Spain. So we've kept in Europe. I mean, there are so many other places that you could have gone to. South Africa for Chenin, Bordeaux. If you are a real fan of Sauvignon Blanc, perhaps you could swerve potentially some of the more pungent
divisive wines such as Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc and go for something a little bit softer. So you could go for a Loire Sauvignon from one of the kind of central, kind of round the central vineyards area. So forget Salsa and Montesano unless you got the budget and the group to do it. But things like Ray, Quincy, those kind of wines can represent really good value for money as well.
Yeah, or some of the whites from the Entre de Mayr as well. But really, you know, really nice value, but still lots of flavour, lots of punch for what you're paying for them.
And especially the blends as well. Sometimes actually, and especially from Spain, there are a lot of really good white blends.
And Portugal, actually, as well.
Yeah, as Catherine said, the list is endless. I think it's to go on and on about all the things you could have tried.
But right now,
yes, apologies. Right now, we are trying the Xovial Albariño from Rías Baixas. It's the 2022 vintage. And it's made by Bodegas Paso de Villaray, which is a very dynamic enterprise. They've got 81 hectares in Salnes, in the heartland of the Rías Baixas, centred on the town of Cambados. The vineyards are located at altitudes of between 100 and 300 meters above sea level. There's perfect microclimate there. So you've got temperate, humid climate, mild temperatures in the summer, which means that the grapes have a chance to ripen slowly. And by ripening slowly, they have a chance to pick up all of the aromas and all of the complexity of the grape variety, as well as keeping their acidity, because the faster the sugar levels go up, the faster the grapes will ripen, the faster the acid will drop. And you really want good acidity for these kind of wines. The banks of the River Umia provide a kind of shallow, sandy soil, which helps to kind of counteract the really humid Atlantic climate that you have there. Again, that helps the maturation of Albariño. And then it's got a natural, very long, slow fermentation in stainless steel tanks. So they're not wanting to muddy any of the flavors, the natural fruit flavors that you get in the wine. They're wanting to keep it very, very pure in style. These stainless steel tanks, very low temperatures, mean that for temperatures for fermentation, mean that you preserve all of the aromatic potential of the variety. So those who've got it, what do you think? What do you think, Catherine?
It's delicious. It's I think in comparison to the Grüner Veltliner, for me, it's that little bit more aromatic, and I really like that. And I think perhaps if I had to choose between the two, if I was just doing choosing one white wine for my drinks party, I would maybe lean towards this one, because I think it might just pip it in terms of being sort of a crowd pleaser all rounder. Because it's still lovely and acidic and a little bit savoury on the palate as well. Almost a little bit that sort of it's like saltiness, like a preserved lemon from the citrus. So it's got a bit of everything, but it's quite beguiling.
Yeah. And that's a nice word. So for me, Albariño is again, it's a relatively soft kind of fruit driven, but that's not to mean that it's not complex white grape variety. I quite often get a little bit of peach on there as well, which means it reminds me a little bit of Viognier, but it's just not as alcoholic. She says checking the volume, it's 13% ABV, so it's not too bad. But yeah, so it's not overly alcoholic, and it's also not overly rich. So it is the kind of wine, as Catherine said, it's got that little bit of minerality to it, that little bit of savouriness, which means you can go back and have another glass without feeling like you've been slightly overcome by the wine. You don't want the wine to overpower the conversation. You want the wine to sit in the background and just kind of grease the wheels of conversation, let everything just go really smoothly and kind of go with the flow rather than muscling in and trying to take center stage.
Yeah, I can see this being really nice pairing. So we had the tempura prawns, and I think that would be really nice. So anything that's got sort of seafoody, that's a bit battered or fried, or maybe some calamari that's got a little bit of sweetness to it itself, but it also has a lovely little you know, batter or something that wants a little bit of the acidity to cut through as well. That'd be a really nice pairing.
I mean, actually, one of the things do as a cheat is you know, you can get the bags of scampi from the deep freeze aisle in the supermarket. So bag of scampi, then put it into a basket. You can serve it if you've got a kind of very, very, very old fashioned, but a kind of wicker basket, put a little bit of newspaper in and serve it in that, and just with wedges of lemon. And I think that would be really lovely with this.
I think as well, because the fruit is so peachy and so ripe and perfumed and aromatic, you know, little bits of hard cheeses, and it's not this isn't the, you know, the most sophisticated of a canapé, but it's not too far off a cheese and pineapple.
I love pineapple.
We're going slightly have a girls' party, but it's, you know,
I might be going down that route. I was watching you going, do say cheese and pineapple, please say cheese and pineapple. So yeah, I think so in terms of canapés, something I've realized I've forgotten to mention is, again, when you're looking at your canapés, plan out the whole of them so that you're not just doing what I tend to do, which is just make more and more and more and more. To try and kind of have a good mixture of different canapés, but also look at how many are you going to be serving hot and how many are you going to serve cold. So it's nice to get a kind of a selection of hot, selection of cold, so that you've got both, and then look at your textures. So it's nice to have some that are soft, some that are crunchy, you know, some that are hot, some that are cold. So you're getting kind of, it's just keeping it all interesting.
I like, when it comes to the hot canapes as well, I like to look at ones that, yes, great when they're first out the oven, and you know, the people that are paying attention to the canapé table, or the, you know, wherever you're popping them, they know to have them hot. But when they've gone slightly more ambient or slightly cooled off, they're still, you know,
they're still nice,
still delicious.
Yeah.
So looking for, I know those little horseradish and little bits of beef in you know, a little Yorkshire pudding. Those, I think, you know, if anything, I think they're slightly nicer, a little bit cooler.
Yes, and
you
again,
you get more of the flavors coming through.
You can. My mum was bemoaning the fact that she was trying to do them, she couldn't find little tins that were small enough, and then when she found the right size, it's getting the oil hot enough in each of them, because you're putting it across, and then getting so that you can get a good rise. But we were saying, and if anybody knows where you can get them from, we are on the hunt for small Yorkshire puddings from the freezer. The kind of, we think Aunt Bessie should really be making canapé size Yorkshire puddings that you can then just put your little bit of roast beef or your little bit of smoked mackerel or something in the top of it, and off you go. Delicious.
With the Grüner Veltliner, Andrew's mentioned that they've had some nibbles including smoked salmon and anchovies, and it went really well with the Grüner Veltliner.
Can you imagine it would, actually.
So you've got that lovely oily fish and a really nice, crisp, clean Grüner. Yeah,
that sounds lovely, actually. And if anybody else has been trying some interesting nibbles, please do let us know as well, because we always want to get as much inspiration as we can, especially in the run-up to Christmas, which I think, I mean, we were talking about it earlier, weren't we? It's almost like life stops after New Year. You're trying to cram every party that you can into the Christmas kind of run-up. So I think we're going to propose parties in January, so that it's a bit less full on and stressful. But it is definitely the case that the social calendar does tend to kind of go through the roof in the run-up to Christmas. So
absolutely.
Yeah, it's good to have as many things up your sleeve as you possibly can. Okay, are you ready to move on to the red wines?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes, definitely. It's a final step.
So for the reds, again, I was looking for wines that could be drunk on their own or wines that you could have with light nibbles. So for the two red wines I chose two quite different styles, I think. One is much lighter and more fruity. The other one is much more full-bodied. And again, there are so many other options you could go for that we can talk about as well. So the first red is the Semeli Feast. It's 2022. I think if I saw rightly, this one's actually sold out now, hasn't it?
Let's have a look. I think it's still available. But
not sure. But if it's not, it's kind of I chose a Greek I'll be on the other side of the camera drink faster than us and then our presenters, I wonder. I wouldn't dare comment. If you need us to hurry up or slow down, just let us know on the chat because we're more than welcome to be more than happy to be guided by you. So yes, I chose this one because I thought it was interesting to do a Greek wine for a change. It's kind of it's a bit of a kind of chat starter, especially if you've got people who don't necessarily know each other. It has sold out, hasn't it? So I'm very sorry. I think that they will
There
definitely...
is a suggested alternative, though, which is the Mitrovelas, the red on black Iotico, which is also another great
really nice one.
Yeah.
And other options that you could go for if you were going to look for the kind of lighter styles are... some of the Spanish Garnaches, but I would say be aware of the potential alcohol in the Spanish Garnaches because some of them can be easily hitting 14.5%, which for some people isn't a problem at all. But I have to say, for me, it floors me.
Especially if your drinks party's midweek and you have to go to work the next day.
Yeah, that's not so great. But, you know, other options are Beaujolais. I love Beaujolais it's a Beaujolais again, really good food wine, but it does work really well on its own as well. And with Beaujolais, obviously, you've got the vast range in budget. So you can go for one of the named villages, one of the crus, or you can go for Beaujolais Village, all of which will be really, I think, would work really well.
And I think some of your southern French, so some Languedoc reds, so maybe like the Duo de Midi or the Domaine Labrie, which are, again, they're real crowd pleasing reds that if someone comes round and you offer them a drink and they're like, oh, red wine, you know you have everything that is expected of a red wine while still being a little bit interesting and something they'll enjoy.
And again, sometimes it's more interesting to go for a wine that's a blend because then you've got the different components of the blend coming together and they can make a more interesting wine. It doesn't always happen that way, but it can work really well, especially if you're just wanting something that people can drink and it's going on in the background. So this is the Semeli Feast. Semeli is one of Greece's leading winemaking and family-owned businesses. They've greatly contributed to the recognition of the Peloponnese region in international markets. It was founded in 1979 by the Nasiakos, I think it is, Nasiakos family, who are one of the oldest families in the area, and they own some of the best plots on the Mantinea Plateau at an altitude of 600 meters. Leonidas is the enologist and grandson of the founder. He's now in charge. The estate tends to concentrate on the region's flagship grape varieties, so it's Reditus, Moscioflero, Malagusa and Agaritico, but they do also grow some international grape varieties as well, so Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Syrah, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Veltliner, and they blend these international grape varieties in with the indigenous Greek grape varieties. So this wine is unoaked. I did that on purpose because I do find I really like oak in wine, but it's another one of those things that can be divisive.
Can be, yeah.
So for that reason, I thought, right, just go simple, go pure, and just kind of keep it simple. Don't mess about with it too much. So if anybody's got this wine, please do let us know what you think. What do you think, Catherine?
I really like it, and I think going back to the, choosing a red wine that's unoaked, and even I would say with your white wines, choosing an unoaked one, because you're looking to have it with such an array of foods, and that it will be, you're not having it with a sit-down meal. It's for grazing effectively. That I think keeping that freshness and the fruit of the wine being the primary characteristic that's coming across, the freshness of the fruit, the brightness of the fruit, and the perfume to it.
Yeah,
that is where my focus would be. So I would want it to, not have complexity of oak, where actually if you were just enjoying the, a nice sit down and a glass of red wine, you might want the oak because it's a bit, it's comforting and it's got a nice sort of warmth to it. Yeah. But actually for this sort of thing, I would lean much more towards an oaked wine. I don't know, but has it had any malolactic on it at all? Because it has got to me on the nose, there's a hint of slight creaminess to it.
It didn't say that it had, but that doesn't mean that it hasn't. I mean, quite often. Oh, interesting. So Anthony's saying it's nicer.
Yeah.
I do really like this wine. A lot of the reds have gone through mallow, so
just to kind of soften it slightly. It's got it's a lovely red fruit, but there's the softness of sort of strawberry and plum, and it's not so. And that enhances the ripeness of it as well. Sometimes you can get a red wine that's very sort of crunchy fruited. And I think that's quite clear in the other Greek reds that members may be very familiar with. So the Silamavro, which has that real sort of red curranty, like tart cherry crunch to it,
and
which is delicious, and the tannin, whereas this has got that lovely softness.
Yeah, and the tannins are quite, they're not low, but they are nice and soft, and they're nice and rounded. So again, I mean, there's such a big difference between sitting down, for example, having a roast dinner, or perhaps they say steak, but obviously, for the non-meat eaters out there, some kind of bake, or kind of something quite full scale, so quite proteiny, so lots of lentils or something. There's a big difference from that and just being able to drink a wine on its own, with the odd nibble if you want it, the odd piece of cheese, and not having to worry about paying it too much due, or it overpowering the food, or needing food in order to be drinkable. So I think this kind of, again, it kind of sits quite neatly.
What's the alcohol on this one?
It is 13%,
but it wears
not bad.
It very well as well. It's very nicely integrated, so you're not getting sort of too much heat or having to not that you should be speeding through your drinking. It depends. You might want to leave the party early, but you don't want to have it really being too much of you don't want to be noticing the alcohol, I think, when you're drinking, particularly at a drinks party like this. And I think this has it really nicely integrated. It's got that really nice balance of the perfume, and the tannins, enough that you've got a nice bit of texture to it, but not so much that you really take notice of them.
So Neil was just saying that he it's a nice alternative to other lighter red wine styles, and that's brilliant, because that's what I was going for. So thank you very much. I'm glad you like it, but also hopefully it just opens your mind up to thinking, well, actually, there's so many areas of the world that you can explore. Just go for, in terms of the society, just make sure that you go for kind of C in terms of body, maybe kind of around the sea, because then you're sat in the middle. Once you go into the D's and the E's, you're getting really quite full-bodied, which there's nothing wrong with. And if you know that you've got, because you'll know your gathering, you'll know your friends, if it's a close group of you and you know very well what everybody really likes. My mum and dad have a shelf in their wine fridge which is purely New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc for their next door neighbours, because that's all they drink. And that's brilliant, because their neighbours love it when they come over, because they have exactly the kind of wine they want. So if you've got people coming over and you think, well, I know they really like something a lot more full-bodied, then obviously you go for it. But if it's a big old mix of people, or your PTA or those kind of things, then you are maybe safer going for something a little bit lighter.
I think it's interesting as well, Neil, that you've said that you wouldn't normally think Greece for red wine. And I think that's probably true of quite a lot of people, because I think we've made such a big thing, quite rightly recently, about the white wines that Greece is producing, and particularly making such a big thing about them in the summer, because it does feel, quite seasonally tailored. But actually, that's another consideration for what you're wanting to choose for your drinks party, or drink, you're drinking at any point of the year. You don't have to categorize it into sort of seasonal styles. All wines will work at all points of the year if that's what you enjoy, and it's how it suits the situation you're enjoying it in. We don't want to harp on too much with our regular rosés are not just for summer.
I was going to say, likewise, you could easily have gone for a rosé as well. They would be perfect. And apologies, I'm looking over. Andrew was saying, we are rushing ahead. We're sorry, Andrew. We don't mean to rush you, because they're still on the whites. And you're saying, so you liked the, what was it, the Spanish first, and then the Grüner, and the Grüner's working really well with prawn toast, which I can imagine it would actually. I didn't think of doing Chinese. Chinese nibbles would be
and actually,
perfect.
because you've got the sesame seeds in your prawn toast, so you've got that slight cereally quality, that actually you get that that texture and that sort of, it's not quite minerality the same in the wine, but a little bit of that sort of cereally nuttiness to it as well. So that sounds like a great pairing.
Very nice, very nice. So if anybody has got any good nibble ideas, please do let us know. I've told you about my favorite one that I put on the email, which was the polenta triangles, or the other shapes are available. And the other one my mum always used to do, which is probably quite 70s in style, but if you get slices of white bread and you put a tiny bit of butter and then some pate, so smear pate on them, and then roll them tightly into kind of little kind of pinwheels, and then you cut them, put a cocktail stick in them to keep them in place, and then put them in the oven and just bake them. They can be eaten hot or cold as well. They're lovely when they've just come out of the oven, because they're all crispy and slightly gooey. But they also work really well when they're cold as well. So that's normally one of the ones that comes out at some point over the drinks party, because partly because I just really like eating them. And I think you have to cook stuff that you want to eat as well.
I think this wine particularly, would be really nice with like a charcuterie board, so like parma ham, salami, and also your softer cheeses as well. So the creamier, so like maybe like a baked camembert.
Oh, lovely!
Or, some little brie and cranberry bites. So again, you've got the plush fruits of the wine acting almost like your cranberry sauce, or a little bit of compote, or sort of chutney with the cheese as well. So that's really great. And Sarah, I've just noticed Delia online has lots of lovely recipes. Who doesn't love Delia Smith? I don't know that anyone doesn't love Delia Smith.
I've got Delia's Christmas cookbook, and it's It's lovely. Every time I read it, though, the other last weekend, I announced to my mum that it was time I made my Christmas cake, and she's like, "You are
You're very
too
behind.
late for that. It's untrue." So I was like, "Oh no, I'm going to do it next year."
Yeah.
But she's also she's got some great recipes.
I got
as well.
my mum got me my own copy of Delia's Christmas cookbook a couple of years ago for Christmas, because
She's fed up of you using
borrowing
hers.
But and again, the great thing of Delia's cookbook is she's got some really handy step by step of how to, you know, host things, and how to what to do when, and how to plan ahead, and
and looking at your timings. It's all about preparation and timing.
Yes,
it really is.
On the topic of cookbooks, there's another one that I would recommend that I've got, which is Gizzy Erskine's Seasonal Eatings. And it takes you from Halloween. So it goes from sort of Halloween, bonfire night, all the way up to sort of Burns night. So it's that entire period of slightly more festive entertaining that we do. There's some really nice options in there. I'd really recommend hunting that one out. So if you if you're
haven't got
some
that
inspiration,
one, we have a 1 in 1 out policy on cookbooks, so I always have to choose them really carefully.
and visit the library. I always forget about the library and cookbooks, but it's a great resource.
So Neil was saying that really loved Greek white, but the red has given him an insight into Greek red. So hey, our work here is done. We're going to say goodnight. And off we go.
I think that's true, because again, like the focus we give to Greek whites, we give a lot of focus in terms of Greek reds to Namavro, but there's so many other delicious Greek reds that are produced and that deserve as much attention.
Not stop at Namavro, delicious as it is, but Namavro again is much more of a food wine, so that would be a wine that I wouldn't do for a drinks party, but I would happily do for a dinner party. You know, I think wines quite often they've got their place, and kind of try and you can shoehorn anything in if you try hard enough. But it's a bit of a. I
think you want for a drinks party, you don't want to be waiting for the wine to evolve and come into itself. You don't want it to, you know, take the 10 minutes in your glass to really let itself unfurl. It needs to show you what it is as soon as it's in your glass and you're enjoying it. This is similarly, you know, in terms of serving, I wouldn't want to worry about any wines that you would need to decant or, you know, it's just additional faff that no one really needs when it comes to
for that matter party. It's great if it's screw cap. And actually the two whites and the Semeli Red are all screw cap, which it's brilliant because it just takes away some of the faff.
Yeah,
anything that makes your life easier.
Running around for a corkscrew or finding out who had it last.
Okay, are we happy to move on to the Weinert?
Let's go to the red.
The other red,
Oh, that is a great suggestion. So we've just had a comment that if you like Japanese food, you can buy the vegetable or meat gyozas in the Asian supermarkets and heat them up in the oven, have some soy sauce for dipping.
Oh, lovely.
Perfect with bubbly or white. Yeah, that is a great suggestion.
Yeah, it is. Actually, the kind of the other supermarkets, so kind of your Oriental supermarkets and so on, your Indian supermarkets can be really good sources of quite different canapes as well.
And authentic and
delicious.
Yeah, delicious.
So for the second red, gone for something quite different. So we've gone for the Weinert, the Carrascal Corte Tinto Mendoza, the 2019. The Carrascal Weinert was founded in 1975 by Bernardo Weinert, who is a Brazilian winemaker, a Brazilian businessman of German origin. He's gone on to become one of the highest, to create one of the highest acclaimed wineries in Argentina. He really invested heavily from the start. He was determined from the start to make a really high quality wine in the best way possible. And the ethos persists until this day. So after exhaustive research and study, Bernardo chose to establish his estate at León de Cuyo, one of the area's best known for top quality wines in Argentina's famous Mendoza province. The climate here in this area of Mendoza is ideal for viticulture. So you've got low levels of frost, low levels of hail, and it's not too windy. You've got lots of sunshine, and you've got really good supply of fresh water from the surrounding rivers and from the snowmelt that comes from the Andes as well. It's quite a small operation by Argentinian standards. So they only have 40 hectares of vineyards, and they only produce 1.2 million litres a year. His red wines are noticeable because they're normally aged for between 2 to 5 years, quite often even longer than that, in old big oak casks or foudres in a deep, cool granite cellar. Over time, the fruit it very much softens, it mellows, and you get the tertiary aromas and flavors of leather, tobacco, and kind of cedar there as well. And it gives these wines a kind of similarity to wines like traditional Riojas and to Lebanon Chateau Moussard as well. This is a blend of 40% Malbec, 35% Cabernet Sauvignon, and 25% Merlot, kept in large oak foudres of between 2,000 to 9,000 litres for 2 years, until Bernardo feels that they are mellow and rounded enough that they're ready to go out onto the market, and they get released when they're ready to be drunk. So this is a much more full-bodied wine. It has got the oak, but I chose it because I think even though it has oak and everything, it has had the time that it needs in order to mellow out. So it's more complex, it's more full-bodied, but it's still drinking, with or without food again.
Yes, yeah, I think because it's had that time, and because it's been in the foudres that are so large, it has meant that it's really nicely integrated. You're not getting a real hit of oak as your first thing. And I think for me, this would be ideal if I knew that my canapé selection was going to be more led towards the sort of umami rich foods. So whether that is your meats and cheeses, or
your mushroom
pâtés,
and those kind of things.
Yeah, the little like grilled portobello mushrooms, and with a bit of blue cheese, or I'm so hungry now. But those sort of things, rather than your French radishes and butter, which is delicious, but or peppers and hummus and things that are really crisp and fresh. This actually suits much more of the
richer,
the rich
earthy foods style of canapés.
Yes.
And also, I mean, for me, I think my family are all relatively full-bodied red drinkers, and so I think this is a wine that would it sits neatly in that area of it's full-bodied enough to please them, but not so full-bodied that they ideally would need to actually have constant food with it. So for that reason, that's kind of the reason I chose it.
And this lends itself nicely, to the point in your drinks party when maybe you're just having a little break from your canapé selection, and your people have got comfortable with each other, the conversations are flowing, and everyone's just feeling cozy and comfortable, and just wanting to sort of savor their drinking. They're relaxed into it, and it is a wine you can relax with. It's got that lovely comforting warmth from that little bit of oak influence in there.
Yeah. So if anybody does have this wine and has had a chance to start trying it, please do let us know what you think of it. Alternative suggestions would be things like South African Grenache would work really well.
Some Western Australian Grenaches as well.
Yes. And Australian Shiraz as well. Again, don't go too personally, I mean, everything is personal, so go wherever you like ultimately, but for me personally, I would say don't go too gutsy. Go for kind of the kind of slightly lighter Shirazes, so perhaps not something from McLaren Vale. Something that's just a little bit lighter and a little bit softer, but you know, that kind of spice, or a Shiraz Cabernet or a kind of Grenache Shiraz Mourvedre kind of style would work really well as well.
Yeah, or like a nice little Côte de Rhône, something a bit, you know, but got that nice sort of garrigue, sort of woody herb quality to it. It's actually reminded me of a little sort of canapé skewer that you can do with lamb on. Now, I first came across this nibble for sort of a summer party because it was saying to do it on the barbecue, but you can do it in advance on the grill, and it's actually using rosemary as your skewer. So you because it's nice and woody and firm, you can pop it through the little cubes of lamb, grill them or sear them on a griddle on the hob, and you've got that lovely sort of rich, melty bits of lovely luscious lamb, but then you've also got that lovely herby note to it as well.
Excuse me, I'm gonna have some water. That's I'm just
so overwhelmed.
Why? No, I'm like,
but yeah, I think anything that's got that lovely sort of herby, aromatic, perfumed quality to it, and again, thinking to our cheese board options, you know, some Comté or Gouda or
lovely
a bit of cheddar.
Yeah, if you're doing a kind of a classic hard cheese board, so you go to your Comté and your cheddar kind of in big blocks, and a knife for people to cut a little bit off. I think this would work really well together.
Little sausages.
Lovely. Oh yeah,
sausage rolls.
Sausage rolls always go down well.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law does lovely kind of cocktail sausages that you just mix through with honey and sesame seeds, and then she just bakes them in the oven.
Yeah.
And they're so easy to do, but so tasty.
Little bit of chorizo. If you wanted to do some little chorizo in red wine, like you would get at your tapas restaurant, I would also say you could use this to do your, you know, your little cooking with. It's got enough intensity, and the oak's not so much that it would sort of overpower.
I do love that canapé, but I always think, oh God, we've got a cream rug in the living room. And, so it's do look at the colour of the food that you are serving. When you're deciding what canapés you're going to do, because it's embarrassing for the guest, but it's also mortifying for you when somebody drops an entire thing of something stains on something that's cream.
Yes, and if someone does spill red wine, white wine doesn't do anything to help. So you're better off just drinking the white wine and worrying about your carpet another day than actually trying to rectify the stain from the red. So Sarah said that the Carrascal is lovely, first time drinking it, so I'm glad you're enjoying it, and she agrees it's mellow but full-bodied but mellow, sorry.
So perfect, and really glad you like it. And hopefully, if we've done nothing else, we've introduced you to a couple of wines that you kind of think, oh,
something interesting.
That's interesting, it's different, and it's a new wine friend. So that's happy days.
Neil's saying it's a tremendous value, and it's more in his go-to styles, like Rioja GSM.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, I mean, for some people, things like the Semeli Feast will just be too light, and if you fall into that camp, then don't do it. Make sure that you're serving a wine that you want to drink, because there is a possibility that you will be left with some at the end of the party as well. So you don't want to be left with something that you're thinking, oh, I don't want to drink that. Could somebody take it away with them, please?
And Mark has actually said that they've been enjoying some sesame sausages this evening. So glad to hear that's working great. If you do have wine left at the end, in terms of just keeping it at its freshness as well, if you have the space, I would say even with your reds, to pop them in the fridge, and then when it comes to wanting to drink them at a later date, obviously take them out, let them come up to temperature a little bit more, but they'll last a lot longer if you pop all of them in the fridge, even the red wines. If you've got any of the little vacuums, they're very handy.
Yeah, I have to say they're probably the most unused thing in our household, actually. Those baggy fan packs, they're good.
They are.
We don't tend to have a lot of red wine or white wine that's not finished.
My dad loves using it, although sometimes it sounds more like he's trying to bring the wine back to life than just suck the air out. And I have to tell him that no, when it starts to click, it's ready to leave it alone. You're not performing CPR.
So Sheila is saying that cooking salt, plenty of it, is good for red wine stains. Leave it overnight, and the next day you can brush it off, brush up the pink remains.
Thank you, Sheila. That's a great tip.
That is a good tip. And I do remember at a party at my mum and dad's, this was years ago, they had a kind of pale blue carpet, and somebody came in and just dropped an entire bottle of red wine all over it. And it all happened in slow motion. But if you can get to it quick enough without causing a real kind of fuss and disturbance and embarrassment, then yes. So do have some cheap, copious amounts of cooking salt in the cupboard, just in case of emergencies. We also use my husband always calls it Dr. Urtke, but it's not, because that's for food. The carpet, there's a carpet, Beckman. And they do a carpet stain. Other brands are available, absolutely. And that's been quite good as well for those moments where you think, oh, I don't believe I've just seen that happen.
I think before we go on to the final wine, in terms of some other things to consider for opportunities or situations where you will be supplying wine for quite a few people, is the bag-in-box wines that have really, really come on. And I think, it's testament that we've put a number of our own label wines in bag-in-box. Great if you're feeding supplying wine for quite a group, and you just want a couple of options, or you want a few options that actually people can have a bit more choice, because it's that inert vessel. You don't have to worry that once you've started using the tap that you have to use it up really quickly. I think it's about 3 months, isn't it? Yeah, it is. So it is a good while, and you for value for money, you get a nice amount in there. Obviously there's some bag-in-box wines that are perhaps less less good quality, and historically they've not necessarily been exactly what you want, but it's not the fact that it's bag-in-box itself, because it's an inert vessel. Well, so
historically there was issues with the bag, because you couldn't get it to be stable enough. So if the light got to it, it would the kind of the silver would flake off, and then the wine would become light struck, so it would spoil. And you do have kind of potential issues of oxygen ingress around the tap itself. But no, I mean,
if your wine is good going into the bag to start with,
it will stay, and because the bag collapses in
coming out,
it collapses in around the wine as you're drawing the wine off, it remains fresh for, as we said, kind of 3 months. So it is dangerous to have bag-in-box, because you go, just have a little glass, and it's quite hard to really keep an eye on how much is left in the box. But it is a really good option, especially if you want people to just be able to go and help themselves as well. So you could just have a selection lined up, job done. People can just help themselves to that. In terms of cheap bag-in-box, I always remember, I mean, it was a few years ago now, going to a festival, and I was tempted by a very cheap 5 litres of Côte de Rhône bag-in-box. I think it was something like £15. I said, that's a bargain. There was a reason for that. It was undrinkable. Absolutely undrinkable. But the society now have actually got some really good, so the kind of Society's White Burgundy,
and the French Pinot Noir is a really good one.
Society's Claret as well. These are all wines that are perfectly quaffable on their own or with nibbles. So it's a good shout, actually. Good shout.
Also as well, perhaps if you wanted to impress slightly, when you're doing your first sort of welcome drink, you could look at getting a magnum of fizz. It might work out a little bit more cost effective for you, or it's also just, it's just quite impressive to be offering a drink from a Magnum. It just
started to mean to go on. It's
Yeah.
definitely a statement of intent.
It's a special time, but if you're there celebrating, getting together, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We haven't talked about any cocktail suggestions.
Ooh.
So I think that is something as well to consider for a drinks party, and whether that is, instead of a sparkling wine, you create yourself a bespoke party cocktail as that's your welcome drink for people, or it might be something, if they're not drinking wine, or if they're not drinking at all, then there's other options to be considering.
We've been looking for options for my mum for Christmas, because she doesn't drink. Well, she can't drink very much at all. So again, Delia has a lovely cranberry cooler, and just things like, so the Gratian and Mayr Ferdinand, non-alcoholic sparkling wine. If you're making Bucks Fizz or Kia Royale, by the time you've got the orange juice and the cassis in there, you can't really.
Although if you're using cassis, that is alcohol.
It is alcoholic.
But,
you
a
can
cordial
actually use a cordial as well if you wanted to. But if you wanted to just kind of if you wanted to bring down the level of alcohol that was being consumed, then you could just use cassis and sparkling wine, because you don't use very much of it. So and you can't. Well, I find once you're blending it with other things, you can't really tell whether it's
and things like the kombuchas that we've got available at the moment as well. One of the LA kombucha, the LA brewery kombucha we have, which is the Blush, that's a really nice sparkling alternative for people, or the spirit equivalent. So I think we've got the Pentire Seaward, which is sort of like a gin equivalent, which great, get a selection of lots of seasonal tonics are available. I know Fever Tree do some great ones, and then you've got a really nice option for someone that's perhaps they might have a couple of drinks, but then they might be driving later on. Or
the only thing I will say, if you're thinking of doing cocktails, try and do something that you can do in a jug.
Yes,
because we've made the mistake in the Briffett household before, where we've been like, we'll do these cocktails, and then you realise that to produce a cocktail for each person is so incredibly involved that there ends up being an enormous queue. So do look and see, if you have a favorite cocktail, can it be kind of, I was going to say upcycled, but can it be made large by being in a big pitcher or an enormous bowl? So punch, I like mulled wine. Actually,
mulled wine as well.
Especially if you're doing anything outside, then mulled wine's just lovely. It's just an excuse over Christmas, isn't it? So, I'm aware of time. So for our final wine, we've got something a little bit different. So we've got the sweeter style of sherry, which is the Society's Exhibition Mature Medium Sweet Oloroso blend. Quite a mouthful. While I'm getting this cap off, Catherine can share
for you. So this is for when you are starting to bring out your little dessert canapes, or also great if you just want to share around a selection tin of chocolates, if you don't want to go to too much effort, but you want a little sweet treat at the end, towards the end of your drinks party.
I mean, I put this on in because I often think of sherry at Christmas time. It's not just for Christmas, but like Rose say, sherry is also not just for Christmas. It can make for serving a sherry instead of kind of going down the route of cocktails and sparkling wine or red and white wine. It can make for a really different kind of event, and it's quite a different get together if you just fancy going slightly off the beaten track. You might use a sherry if you were hosting a late afternoon or lunchtime drinks party. And if you're serving sweet canapes instead of savoury ones, so this sherry works absolutely brilliantly with mince pies, which we have a big pile in front of us.
Okay, good for
and also things like stollen bites, which you can increasingly get now from the supermarkets. They do the little mini stollen bites, or get a normal size stollen and just cut it into little chunks. Any kind of fruitcake, so Christmas cake or anything like that.
I know there's a little Lebkuchen, the little like, chocolate dipped Lebkuchen where you've got the real spicy ginger in it.
Or chocolate brownies as well. So you can do canapes are not just limited to your savoury canapes. You can do any sweet canapes as well. One of the things I was looking at are kind of little fruit kebabs. So you just put your different fruits onto, a bit harder at this time of year, but quite good if you're doing a drinks party in the summer. Just like little fruit kebabs, so you just kind of have something a little bit fresher instead. All of these things, so your stollen, your brownies, your fruitcake, apart from my Christmas fruitcake, which is probably not going to happen, or next year's fruitcake, they can all be made yourself. You can make all of these things from at home yourself, or you can really easily buy them from the supermarket as well. So it's completely up to you as to how far you want to go with all of this. I think sometimes, as my mother says, life is just too short. So this little beauty is from Sanchez Remate Hermanos, which is one of the few remaining wineries in Jerez, which is still in the hands of local owners. It was founded in 1781, which means it's now one of Spain's oldest wineries still in operation. If you like the wine, you are in very good company, because they are purveyor to the House of Lords in the United Kingdom. In 1917, they were appointed as official purveyors to the Sacred Apostolic Palace of the Vatican. So the Pope likes it. It's been aged in the big oak butts. So aging is concentrated not only the flavour, but the structure. So it's intensely sweet, and it's opulent, but it's not cloying. It's got really kind of lovely structure to it. So this is possibly, bizarrely, one of the kind of most full-bodied wines that we're showing today. But it does mean it stands up to most puddings, including chocolate. So talked about chocolate brownies, but you could do even more kind of low-key and just have pieces, kind of chocolate truffles, or any of those kind of things, and nuts as well. So bowls of fruit and nuts as well would work really well. And one of the things I discovered when first looking into the art of hosting the perfect drinks party is that, according to the rules of etiquette, on serving the sweet canapé, the host is signalling to their guests at the party that the party is drawing to a close. So sweet canapés are a good thing to have up your sleeve or in your kitchen to produce when you want people to go home. And if you're a guest at a party and you're suddenly, unless they're serving it from the beginning, which would just be rude,
throw you off guard.
So if they've been serving savoury nibbles all the way through, and then suddenly out come the sweet ones, that is your host's way of saying, I've loved you, but it's time for you to go home.
Oh, it's delicious, isn't it? I'm a real sherry fiend, but this is one of my favourite styles. And
it's almost slightly coffee.
It is, isn't it? It's although you don't want to run the risk then of people asking for coffees, because then they'll get a second wind and then they'll never leave. But, and if you were serving mince pies, say, and if you had the time and wanted to serve them warm, if you had any little nuggets of blue cheese or something left over, you could just pop the top of your mince pie, pop a bit of cheese in, and have that with your sherry. That would be
that would delicious. Go beautifully with some blue cheese as well. So just kind of little cubes of really nice blue cheese would be absolutely perfect with that.
It's almost the dessert in itself, isn't it? That is your sweet treat.
I think definitely
as well. It's am I right in thinking that's a 75 centiliter?
It is a 75.
So again, very good value when you look at sweet
Yeah.
wines in general. Often you're looking at your 50 centiliter or half bottles.
Mhm.
In a similar vein, if you were wanting a sweet wine that was a little bit more, a bit lighter in style and perhaps noble rot and has the more citrusy sort of peachy flavour to it. If you were serving more like little mini pavlovas or sort of more fruit-based little desserts, then things like the Monbazillac, the Pêche La Calvi is a really great option. Again, 75 centilitres. So a full bottle, not quite as heady and syrupy as some sauternes can be, but made in the same style from the Dordogne. And that is a really nice option for your sort of your little mini lemon meringue pies. You know, you can get those sort of selection packs of mini desserts from the freezer section that, you know, like little profiteroles and things.
Oh yeah, that'd be lovely.
Really great
with as well.
With that as
and
well.
Salted caramel, any of those kind of things, it would work really well with. And I just really like to have a bottle of it in the house over Christmas because
just in case.
It's that kind of wine where, you know, when you've had everybody over and then they finally leave and you just, all around you is chaos and destruction and you just think, I'm not dealing with this right now. So you just pour yourself a small glass of something and just sit down on the sofa and just kind of shut your eyes. This is one of those wines that you take with you to the sofa and just have a moment on your own to contemplate life and to contemplate how well your party has gone.
Yes,
as well.
and how you are the host with the most. And you put on an excellent spread.
And everybody's going, gosh, that was professionally done. So, has anybody got any questions at all? Can we come to the end of our wines now?
Any questions or any thoughts on the wines?
Yeah, please.
Do let us know. And while you're perhaps pondering on that, we should say we will be back next week, next Friday. We'll be back in the members' room in front of the tree. We thought it'd be nice and festive. And we've got our wines for your Christmas table pairing suggestions. So if you've already registered for that, you should hopefully have received my email with the suggested wines and the sort of dish suggestions, but it is also on the website as well if you are looking to join us for some inspiration, either to watch live or to catch up on over in readiness for your Christmas hosting. We've just got some nice comments coming through, Emma, rather than
Sheila
questions.
and Neil, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. We're really glad that you've enjoyed your evening. But if anybody does have any questions at all before you head off, please do ask. Likewise, if you hang up on tonight's, not that you hang up on a webinar, but if you kind of go away this evening and think, oh goodness, gosh, I wish I'd asked, just give us a shout and drop us an email.
We love talking about food and wine, so and entertaining. So we'd be more than happy to
absolutely we would
consider it and get back to you. So, well, thank you very much, Emma. A really nice selection of wines. I hope you feel the same way next week about mine as I do for yours this evening.
Yeah, you're being really nice to me tonight because you're like, otherwise I'm just going to hang you out to dry next week. No, thank you all so much for joining us. And if we don't see you online again, we hope you have a really, really super Christmas and some amazing drinks parties as well. So thank you for joining us and happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Too soon? No.
Merry Christmas.
Cheers.